Hi, grade threes. Today we're starting our new and last unit for math, data analysis. There are two I can statements for this unit. I can collect and organize data using tally marks, charts, or lists. Number two, I can make and interpret bar graphs. Now you should be thinking to yourself, this is really a review of what we've done in class already because we've done this in science. What I want to make sure that you do though is do your traffic lights for before the unit, and then I would like you to read the introductory mathology book on Welcome to the Nature Park, and that will help to introduce you to the unit of data analysis. So what is data? Data is simply facts or information, and we can collect data to learn about the world around us. So the first step in collecting data is to ask a question. So the question that I asked when I was a biologist before I became a teacher was, what do Canadian Steller sea lions eat compared to the Alaskan population? Because if you remember, the Alaskan population has been decreasing by over 80%, and we were trying to figure out the reason why. So you can't go up to a Steller sea lion because they are huge and dangerous and try to figure out what they're eating. So we were using different methods to figure out what the Steller sea lions were eating. By one of the ways that we did that was by looking at their scat and looking at the different bones that were found in their scat. We can't go up to a Steller sea lion and survey them and ask them what they had for breakfast. And so it's a little bit trickier when you are working with animals to find out information about them. So we found out that the Canadian Steller sea lions were eating a higher percentage of salmon in their diet compared to pollock, which the Alaskan sea lions were eating more of. And so this table and this bar graph shows the results of the research that I had done years ago. Okay. We also collect data to learn about people. Now, when we're learning about people, we can simply ask them a question and interview them, or we could send out a survey or a questionnaire to gather the data about people. So we could ask the question, what are students' favorite fruits? And we could collect that data and organize it again into a table, and then we could make a bar graph like I did up here with my Steller sea lions. Okay. In science this year, we asked questions and we collected data by doing experiments. One of the experiments that we did in building and testing, we did lots of experiments in building and testing, but one of the experiments we did was to find out which type of pillar is strongest, a circular pillar or a square pillar. So the biggest thing in collecting data is we have to come up with a question that we need to find an answer to. After you come up with your question, you do your experiment like we did, and then we organize our data into tables. Okay, so we made a nice little table like so, and we said how many washers each type of pillar held before it broke. We can then make conclusions based on our results. So if you look at our table, here the circular pillar held 50 washers compared to the square pillar, which only held 10. So we would say that the circular pillar is by far stronger than the square pillar. So the steps in data analysis are, number one, to ask a question. What do you want to know? Step two is to collect the data. How are you going to find the answer to that question? So if you're asking a question about the world around you, you would do an experiment. So here's another example of an experiment we did to find out which adhesive is strongest. And here, I think this was, it looks like masking tape around the popsicle sticks. When we do experiments, usually we find out quantitative data, or we measure or count things. We can also collect data by doing a survey. And when we do a survey, it's usually to collect data about people. So we can interview people or send out questionnaires. And a lot of times questionnaires are even done by sending like an email questionnaire over the phone. Okay, sometimes you may have gotten phone calls from people who are doing a survey, or your parents might be getting these people who are calling your house and they're asking if they could do a survey to find out information. So we could do a survey in our class. We could ask the students in our class, what is your favorite activity to do? And then we could give them a choice. And we could send this out in like a survey using Google Forms. And then we could give them some choices. We could say, do you like to listen to music? Do you like to read, watch TV, play sports, use a computer? Or is there something that falls under the other category that is your favorite activity? Okay, now, like I said, we could collect the data we could actually interview the students in our class, just simply go up to them and ask them the question, or we could provide them with a questionnaire to answer. Usually you could do by paper, but nowadays everything is done over the internet. Okay, now, once you start collecting your data, you've got to start to like tally up the numbers for each category. And remember, we've done tallying in class. We do use these straight lines to count. And so that would be 1, this is 2, 3, 4. And then once we hit 5, then we actually cross out the 4, and that diagonal line is included in a count. And so this would be counted as like the number 5. Okay. So now step number 3, after we've collected our data, we want to make a table to organize our data. So here is the results of a pretend survey where we've asked students what their favorite activities are to do at home. And by looking at the table, it's nice to see the data. We have the tally marks here, but then we have the number of children over here. This is a little bit easier to read. So once you've got your final results in, you want to include the numbers next, okay? Makes it a lot easier to read. So after you've created a table, what's even nicer is to make a graph. And that's to help see the data better and to notice trends. So looking at the table is fine. You can still figure out, which activities the students like to do the most. But when you make a graph, it really becomes apparent what is the favorite thing, the least favorite thing, etc., to do at home. So after you've made the graph, you can lastly, step number 5, make conclusions. So by looking at our graph or our table, but I want you to take a look at our graph because it's going to be a lot easier for you to see this. You could easily see that using the computer was the favorite thing to do at home. So 7 students said that using a computer was their favorite activity. And then you could say, well, the least favorite was something under the other category. All right. So today's I can statement is I can collect and organize data using tally marks and charts. Tomorrow, we're going to learn how to read bar graphs, and this is just a review of what we've learned before. And then on Wednesday, we're going to learn how to actually make bar graphs. Okay, so I've sent out a survey for our class to do. so that you can actually get some practice in collecting information. There's 3 questions that I've asked. The first question is, what is your favorite subject? And I've only given you 4 choices here: math, language arts, social, or science. So you need to pick one of these as your favorite subject. So I just wanted to make it simple. I didn't include the other subjects of art, gym, health, and music. But this is just to help us to create our table and collect information, just to make it a little bit easier. Okay. The second question I asked was, how many siblings do you have, or how many brothers and sisters? So I'd like you to answer that question. That's going to help us to create some data for us to make a table and a bar graph out of. And then the last question I asked you was, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? Okay, and I've given you, I think, 4 choices: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, bubblegum, and then I put an other category. So you'll choose which of those is your favorite. Okay, so let's just pretend that we've collected the data for the first question. How can we organize the data that we've collected? So step number 1 is to make a table and tally the results as they come in. So I've put a title, Room 113 Students' Favorite Subjects. And I've created the 4 subjects, math, LA, social, and science, so that we can easily add in our tally marks. So as I start getting your answers in, I can start putting the tally marks under your favorite subjects. So let's pretend that the first person answers math. So I would put 1 tally mark under math. Then I say, okay, second person comes in, they say math too. So I put another tally mark. Third person comes in, wow, they are loving math. Okay, so third person says they think math is their favorite subject as well. Fourth person says LA is their favorite subject. Fifth person also says LA. The sixth person said social studies. And then what do you know? All of a sudden, 5 in a row, students say science is their favorite subject. Let's pretend now I'm doing this over a couple of days. The next day, I get some more results in. The next result, somebody says social studies is their favorite. Another person says math. Then I've got another person saying math. So I'm going to now make a tally mark that goes through the 4 to make 5. That means that 5 students have said math is their favorite. But now another person comes in and says science is their favorite. So you can see how this is a working document, because when you're collecting data, usually you don't get the results in all at once. It takes some time to collect data. Okay, now let's say one more person says that they like LA the best. Oh, and then another person said social studies is their favorite. Okay, once you're done collecting your data, now what I want you to do, let's pretend you've closed the survey. Now what I want you to do is write the total number underneath. So you would say for math, 5 people in our class say math is their favorite subject. 3 people said LA is their favorite subject. 3 people said social is their favorite. And lastly, 6 people said science was their favorite subject. Once you've got your data in, you can now come up with some conclusions, or before that, you could make a bar graph. So we're going to make a bar graph using our data once I've actually collected it from you guys. But I want you to see that it's pretty simple to see that most people said science was their favorite subject, then math, and LA and social were tied at 3. Okay, let's do some questions together. Let's pretend I gave you this table and I asked you the question, how many students in total were surveyed? So what you need to do is look at the total number of children for each activity here. And remember, this is the question, what was your favorite activity to do at home? So you would count up how many children basically answered the questions by looking at these numbers and adding them up. So you would say, okay, 6 people said listening to music, plus 4 people said reading, that's 10. Then I would actually even look for another 10. So there's a 3 and I see a 7. I know 3 plus 7 is 10. So 3 plus 7, 10, plus another 10 is 20, plus 4 is 24, plus 2 is 26. Okay, that's how you would figure out how many students in total were surveyed. You're just looking at how many students answered for each of the different categories. Number 2, what do students like to do the most? So take a look at this table. You would say, oh, I see that 7 students like to use the computer the most. And that was the highest number. How about what do students like to do the least? So which number is the lowest? It is the other category. So that is, we don't know what people are saying it is for the other, but we would just put other as our answer. Lastly, how many more students like to read over watch TV? So you should be saying to yourself, that means I need to subtract. So I need to look at how many students like to read. And I see there's 4 students that like to read. And then I look at how many students like to watch TV. 3. So I would say 4 minus 3 equals 1. So the answer is, oh, I went too fast. Sorry, grade 3s. Let me just go back. There we go. So I would say that 1 more student likes to read over watching TV. All right, your assignment today is to complete the collecting and organizing data on pages 104 and 105 in your data analysis unit. Make sure you take a picture of your work and turn it in. And also make sure that you've done those survey questions, those 3 survey questions, so we can start collecting data for our class. And then lastly, you should have done the I can statements, the traffic lights for them, and you could be doing the reading for the Mathology book on graphing. Thanks, grade 3s.